I was kind of just bedazzled backstage by literally between you and our movie, and then the entire cast of that picture was kind of
a lot.
Noah's Ark backstage.
Exactly. Well, with this film, one of the fascinating things about this is Hugh Jackman has now played this character. Well, I guess it's going to be 7 films he's appeared in, if you count, the X-Men First Class cameo. What is it about Hugh in this role? Because he's getting near Johnny Weissmuller territory with Tarzan at this point.
I like Johnny Weissmuller. I miss those. Well, I think he's phenomenal in the role. I think it's I made Kate Leopold with Hugh after he made the first X-Men, and so to me it doesn't seem like the same. He was part of an ensemble in that first film. I think he had no idea, even after completing it, what was happening. I think that so that it's easy to look back and go, he's made 7 movies, he's been the Wolverine, but in the beginning, he was part of a crew, and I think that the evolution of what's happened with it is a natural evolution of it's a great character. It's a great character, and it's a great actor. It's one of those really rare moments where there's an alignment of the right person for the right job, and I think when that happens, Sean Connery Bond, I don't think there's any reason it should stop.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned Connery because he's a guy who was not typecast. He went on to do many other things, but you look at like Christopher Reeve with the Superman costume, or going back to Leonard Nimoy with Mr. Spock, there's people that got locked in. It seems like fans are more forgiving these days, but I think part of that's because the movies are so good. They don't feel like...
I wouldn't credit the movies, and I wouldn't credit anything but just Hugh. I think that the fact is that he's an incredible, versatile... He's not, Leonard Nimoy can't sing and dance, God love him, and he can't do a romantic comedy with Meg Ryan. So that there's a reality to Hugh Jackman in terms of his own versatility that is really uniquely equipped to both eclipse and live within the world of the character created. It's also, if you think about like Eastwood, how many Dirty Harrys were there? 5, but then you think about Clint essentially has been kind of in the groove of that guy for probably 19 movies. The reality is that once people respond to an actor, John Wayne may have had different names, but he was playing the same guy, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I find, having made a lot of movies with movie stars, that there's almost this tragic pressure on them to prove their versatility, whether it's to kind of a critical audience or it's to the public itself. How different was Jimmy Stewart, picture to picture? And I don't mean that as a dig. I mean that as like there's nothing wrong with being Jimmy Stewart. There's nothing wrong with being Gene Arthur or Fred McMurray or Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn didn't do a new accent in every movie. It was like there's a reality that someone who can do. It isn't only the measure of an actor, in my opinion, whether they can change like a chameleon. It's actually the absolute ability to bring yourself, your honest self, to the screen with this big, round, spherical lens 3 inches from your nose, and is a miracle in and of itself. And I think that a lot of actors get hurt, actually, by trying to keep reinventing themselves. As opposed to track stars run, and baseball players play baseball. They don't suddenly next season, well, one did, and it didn't work out so well. So, yeah, the point is that I think the general point is that you really, when you find that vein of gold, that connection with an audience, there's no reason, honestly, to abandon it, other than some kind of public or media-generated sense of shame that you're not branching out more. And I don't really think, I think when you find a groove, you should stick with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it can feel kind of stunty too. If when just trying to.
It can, but it's. I think the real measure is artistically asking yourself inside whether you're flatline. It's the world, whether it's politics or music or athletics or art or movies, has gotten there's so much commentary, and if you listen to it, you can stop listening to yourself. And I think that the moment Hugh is tired of doing this, personally not challenged, he'll stop. Yeah.
That's well said. And you know, a great character, Wolverine is a great character, and great characters are a challenge because you have to, deliver and live up to it, and find a way to do it in a way that's interesting, engaging, but different than what's done before. And you made a lot of choices with this one, and I wanted to ask you about a couple of choices. Sure. The claws. You and I talked when I came to your office, way back when. You changed the claws. There's a notable decrease in the amount of hairspray. From the, like, go back to like X2 and things like that. And just the look of the film, I mean, no superhero costume per se. Talk about one of those, or maybe all of them, or just the...
Well, they were all part of a general strategy I had to make a movie I'd want to see. I mean, honestly, that I had felt, I looked at images of Hugh in the previous movies, and I felt like he looked like he was wearing a wig, frankly. So I was like, kind of... and he was. So that's why it looked like it. But
it's tough hair.
It's tough hair, but it shouldn't be. I mean, for me, you're always trying to walk that line between some kind of relationship to the existing comic book art, and at the same time, you're having to physically make it work on human flesh. So my thing is just... there's like my own barometer of just what I'll reject, and I didn't want a Wolverine to look like a flock of seagulls. So that I was kind of really, and that took, each one of those things, just pushing that through the auspices of 20th Century Fox, when there's been as many movies as you're listing that have had his hair like that, and why can't we do that again? And you're like, because I think it looks like shit, so I'd like to do it differently. Or at least in my opinion, I'd like to try and do it differently. And that's and it was very much in keeping with the idea of trying also, given that the previous Origins film had not been extremely well received, to try and kind of say, let's rethink some things about how we're doing this. And we were very conscious, even of the scripting phase, of giving ourselves a chance to do it. I mean, honestly, since we let his hair grow so long in the beginning, and there's people cutting it who may not know the official Marvel style, then maybe I could even credit it to just what happened, in that room with those two ladies in the tub. But for me, I think it looks fantastic in the beginning, and I think anytime you can allow your actor within their own skin and their own scalp and their own, to be their character and not be separated by layers of, wearing a wig feels like wearing a hat. It's like everything separates you from authenticness. Yeah, and that. If anything, that's what I was after, and that relates to the claws as well. It relates to everything where I felt like some things got over-designed. I mean, I literally just pulled the page from Marvel Comics, and I think it was Weapon X, right on the cover, where I said, make these. I felt like the claws had looked so fake, frankly, in some other shots and movies that I wanted to just, to me, this was a film that wasn't going to operate on the will the world be saved question. So it was going to live and die by just whether you're interested in him as a character. The stakes were, it's like it may not seem gigantic from the outside, but from the inside, it's an entirely different construction in a way where there really is no central villain out to hurt millions, and that the whole thing is operating on a different architecture. And from that point of view, you're kind of going, how can I make the reality of this character and his own humanity come to life?
That's great. And then, you mentioned comics. I remember buying Wolverine #1, the Chris Claremont, Frank Miller comic book, which came out, I think it was September '82, which I think is the same month as Thriller, which is kind of fun to kind of think about. But did you go back, did you spend a lot of time with that series? I mean, obviously, with the bear at the beginning, I mean, that's very much part of that first issue.
Well, there's a lot, I mean, all the principal characters have either are lifted or evolved from what was in Claremont Miller. I think the trick you have the kind of Rubik's Cube you have when you come on a movie like this is, it somehow has to relate to the other things that exist. It just somehow, you can't kind of just pretend those movies didn't happen. So you try and take this story and at the same time plug it in to this larger universe. And I think when this, after Darren left and it kind of was, I don't know what was going on. I was shooting a pilot in New York for Bob De Niro, and I kind of heard that Darren had stopped working on the movie, and actually someone in the van brought it up to me, and I was like, no way. And, well, first of all, following Darren seemed like a suicide mission. Like, immediately, I just felt like I was just going to get, anyone who would even be tempted was just going to get slaughtered for all the, and I say this with love for Darren, great admirer of his, but just it'd be like, following Springsteen or something. You'd be like, why? Why would you bother? You're just going to get slaughtered. Everyone's going to just imagine what could have been. And so but time went by. The project didn't get filled. I finished this pilot. I came back. I was working on other stuff and scripts, and then it kind of came up with more time. But what I was getting to was just that when it finally landed in front of me, the first thing I thought about was, where does this take place in terms of what I've seen already? And it struck me reading the story that it kind of, why is he in the Yukon? Right. You don't ask that question when Claremont Miller opens, because it's kind of like, well, you find it in comic books anywhere and everywhere. But in the context of a movie, it's like, okay, here he is, he's living in the woods. Why? Why now? The movie's going to have to answer that. You can't. Hugh's going to ask me, why am I here? I don't know, it's in the comic book. The reality is, so it struck me that the reason he's there is because he doesn't want to have any more contact. He wants to be alone. And that, to me, was not the change to Claremont Miller, but in a way, the kind of trying to get underneath it and support it, which is just, why would this journey to Japan become important? Why? What has he been avoiding? What is he running from? And it occurred to me that he's running from the fact that anyone he cares for dies. And either through the curse, the dark side of immortality, which is that you are forced to ride this very slow train in which you watch everyone you care about die, or the more aggressive version, which also exists in his world, which is that people who want to get at him kill the people he loved. So and then you have the added juice of the fact that he took out someone he loved in the previous film. So I was the one who decided to try and take this narrative and put it after X3, and in a way make it a sequel to the X-Men films as opposed to a sequel to the Origins film.
Yeah, well, that's a good move. Move there. I don't work the box, sorry. What about, there's a fascinating thing that occurred to me while I was watching this. With characters like Superman, it's that he can't be hurt. With Wolverine, it's that that's all he can do. I mean, that's not all he can do, it's what he ends up doing, is being hurt more than anybody else. I mean, and Hugh has this capacity to show a great deal. There's a lot he can show in his eyes and his face, just through his skill as an actor, and just this sort of evocative kind of spirit I think that he has. That's an interesting concept, though. And with this, you take even that away. Like, was it to make him? You have to have stakes. You have to have peril. And if the guy can't be killed, but he can be hurt a lot, that could end up being a lot of martyr scenes.
You answered your own question. Really. It was beautifully circular. But yes. Not to be a Cohen, but yes. Yeah. I mean, it's more than that. I should dig up this article I read 25 years ago, but someone did an analysis of Alien, Ridley Scott's first movie. Not Ridley's first movie, but the first Alien. And they drew this chart, and they postulated that the movie was a meditation on humanness, or humanness versus like monsterhood, right? So that Like they would go, well, why is there a cat in the movie? Well, the cat is non-human, but not a monster. Why is there an android in the movie? Well, the android is non-human, non-monster. And therefore, if you go through the cast, you kind of have, and then, of course, the creature is full-on monster, alien, doesn't it? So you have this kind of interesting universe. And I've always kept that chart in my head. It was before I made Copland, because when I made Copland, I thought about, you have Stallone in the center, and you have, like, De Niro's character is like Law and Order, and then Keitel's character is like the Brotherhood, and then Ray Liotta's character is like me, just not the Brotherhood, not Law and Order, just what can I get from me? And that those were almost, I thought, three aspects of kind of the modern male and how they're dealing with the world, and Stallone's caught in between. And I've always kind of tried to think, as I'm assembling an ensemble, how you can take a theme and kind of make sure these different points of view are represented. And so when I came on the movie, I wrote on the back of this script very early, everyone I love will die. And then I thought, well, how do I make a movie, a tentpole movie, about death? And so you have Logan, an immortal, who wishes he could die, but can't. You have Mariko, a mortal, who wishes she could die and can't. You have her grandfather, who is at the edge of death and doesn't want to die, and wants what Logan doesn't want, which is immortality. And you have a character like Yukio, who can see death around corners. And then of course you have Jean Grey, who's actually dead. So it's not like I want you to get that as you're watching the movie, but I'm very conscious. I always think if you can if I follow that kind of thought process, I end up. I always know something we can write, first of all, because there's a lot of interesting ideas in there. But there's also the characters all have things to say to each other about their conditions, and that's how we got there in terms of examining it.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. And what about? I think. Well, this is a second question because I know what you're going to say. What about Logan on the plane? He was so nervous. It occurred to me when I was watching this the first time that if he falls into the ocean, he will just drown and come back and drown and come back and drown. Is that why he doesn't want to get on planes? Because
I don't know. It's always been. It's been everyone's who's really knowledgeable about Wolverine has always told me he hates flying, and and Hugh was like, I hate flying. I mean, as Wolverine, and I just love the idiosyncrasy of it. I love that's the beauty of him. I think the beauty of Wolverine is that he's not. It does separate you from kind of the Batman indestructible because of my gizmos, or Superman indestructible because I'm just plain indestructible. Wolverine's greatest enemy is, in a way, not only enemies who are out to hurt him, but his own psyche, his own ability to kind of deal with the bullshit. And that's, whether it's what makes him nervous, or people who insult his intelligence, or just general assholes, the fact is that Logan has a kind of, he's a wonderful character in the sense that he's always struggling. So to me, the idea that he doesn't like to fly, it fits in to me with the animalistic nature of him also. Just the sense that I don't like to be contained. I don't want to be in a tuna can. I don't like to be under someone else's control. I like to, that's as long as I got on that. I thought it played.
No, absolutely. I just like the idea of thinking him walking over the ocean like for 16
The plane crashes and he emerges. We tried also to get away from that. I mean, the kind of sense that you could, we weren't denying it, but the sense, and I don't think this hurt the first Wolverine film at all, but like when he leaps up and brings down a helicopter, I'm like, to me, that's too much. It's like it's getting into Superman territory. Like, I'm like, he doesn't have frog legs. Like, he shouldn't be able to jump that high. Like, my own idea of him is that there's tremendous strength, but it's somehow still bound by physics in some way that we certainly push to the max too, but not quite that far.
But you have to have rules, or else
it just turns into, isn't it amazing? It turns into a video game, watching characters flip through the air in any which way.
Sure, a video game you're not even playing.
That's the worst.
Yeah. You know, it seemed to me that this movie would fit in with some of your other films in that there's a sense of outlaw honor. You know, with like 310 to Yuma and with Copland, as you mentioned, and Walk the Line in a different way. But is that something that you look for? Is that something that just sort of percolates just in your subconscious and catches your eye?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether. I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I think that I make a lot of different kinds of movies, but I think I bring the same sensibility to all of them. I don't try and become a different filmmaker with each movie I make, but I just try and kind of, and I feel like I'm always learning. And that's there's not many filmmakers who, however it happened for me, that I've had the opportunity to make so many different kinds of movies. I don't know quite how I got on that carousel, but I'm really grateful. There was a point earlier in my career where I felt like I was jealous, frankly, of like the filmmakers who kind of branded themselves very quickly and then were anointed and kind of were the first on a list for whenever that kind of movie came around. And with time, I became glad I wasn't. I mean, for the sake of being whoever I am, whatever that is, but also for the sake that the experience of making different kinds of movies is, I can't tell you how much making Identity helped me make Walk the Line, but it did. It's like I can't tell you how much making Kate Leopold helped me make 310 Yuma, but it did. It's like the reality is that breaking out and applying your sensibility in different arenas, I don't know, it can't hurt you. But it's, but yeah, I try to bring, there's certain things I love, and one is kind of intimate moments between characters, quiet moments between characters, and it struck me that it was something that, whatever you call it, tentpole movies or superhero films, for my own sense, lacked, was a sense of, when I read the comics, I didn't feel like they were a non-stop barrage. And obviously, this movie is very loud, and it's got a lot of shit going on. But there are some breaks, and I think that's important to me because it's what keeps me connected, and it's also what makes me feel like we're not making a video game. That there's actually, when the orchestra calms down and the dust settles, you feel like there's actually characters there who you might give a shit about, even though the shit isn't moving so fast.
Even though the shit isn't moving so fast. Ladies and gentlemen, James Mangold and the Wolverine. Thank you guys for coming out.